Good morning. I'm last, so I just wanted to thank our deans and our department chairmen and my family and my friends for taking their time to come in here this morning and to join in this honor. Just to be mentioned with these guys, to me, I equate it to soaring with eagles. I mean, you just can't get any higher. And I've only been here for 3 years, and these guys are just top-notch, and it's just outstanding. So my reflection this morning, the title of my brief talk is called, How Then Shall We Live? And it's a little bit different than everybody else's, and the reasoning behind that is my department chairs will attest to is that we don't get the pleasure of choosing our patients. You know, and we used to make a joke when I was in training that says, well, we don't want to meet by accident, you know, because nobody chooses us in the ICU, nobody chooses my colleagues in the operating room. So, to be able to make a difference has always been the driving force behind every goal I've ever set forth for myself in medicine. As a child, I had the opportunity to watch my grandfather, who graduated from Hopkins in 1930 before doing medical school at Maryland. He functioned as an independent practitioner in a large, big practice in Baltimore. I watched as he worked 7 days a week, never complained, saw his patients in the morning, rounded in the afternoon at 2 different hospitals, never complained. Friday nights we'd have dinner, interrupted by multiple phone calls, never complained, just did what he did and put his coat on at 2 o'clock in the morning to go see his patients. And you know, I'd be lucky if I could pull myself in there, a pair of scrubs, and he'd be in a coat and tie going and seeing his patients. And what really made a difference to me, though, was talking about Hawkeye Pierce, is that my grandfather would always leave the room when MASH would come on. And I asked him once why. And when he answered me, I really learned that big difference. See, Pop told me there was nothing funny about war, and the patients he cared for were way beyond the level of sick that the average physician would care for. He told me about how he trailed Douglas MacArthur through the Philippines during the Second World War. The hospitals were only a mile from the front back then. There was no helicopters. They were brought in by jeeps and by stretchers. He went on to win 3 bronze and 1 silver star. After leaving the Air Force, he came home, practiced medicine until retired at 88. And with that, I decided that I wanted to take care of the sickest patients of all and devote my care to critical care and trauma patients. So time passed during my career, and I got accepted into a pretty prestigious fellowship down at our colleague hospital university at Shock Trauma. While I was there, I was able to see the type of patients that my grandfather cared for, and actually found that they were even more violent because our streets of Baltimore are worse than the jungles overseas. We really got to see it all. I was exposed to patient problems that were unimaginable with the exception of television. But in the real world, we knew that miracles only happen on television for the most part, and that the families of our patients and their loved ones were usually the last to be told of the true realities. With that, I made a promise to myself that if I can't help my patient, I'm sure going to help their family. I emphasize to my residents, fellows, and students to do something good for each one of their patients every day. And following my philosophy of being able to make a difference, you must be able to value the concepts of service and sacrifice. In the academic setting where we all function, this is so vital because we have the opportunity to not only help our patients and their families, but to mold our students, our nurses, and our house staff. Now, the origin of my thoughts comes from the part of my brain that sends out signals for a sense of warning. The sense I have is a subtle, distinct change that's occurring around me, and it doesn't feel right. The sense has grown into perception that society in general, and medicine in particular, is devaluing the ideals of service and sacrifice. At first, I wasn't able to put a finger on it, but then 3 things happened to me that made it click into my head. The first event happened when I saw the movie Saving Private Ryan. And I had never seen it before because we didn't really have a lot of time to do that kind of stuff. But there was a part in the movie when Tom Hanks, playing the dying Lieutenant Miller, whispers, "Earn this," to Private Ryan. This, of course, was the ultimate and supreme sacrifice that he and others had made for Ryan. I had been thinking about that statement for a while, and it occurred to me that all physicians have been given an incredible gift. The science and the heart of healing. No matter how many sacrifices the individual practitioner has made, in preparing to become a doctor, these sacrifices pale in comparison to those made by the thousands of physicians, nurses, patients, and scientists who have made medicine and surgery what it is today. Not only have we been given the numerous diagnostic and therapeutic tools, we've been given a certain trust, admiration, and respect simply because we are the professionals and not because we really specifically earned it. It also occurred to me that the physicians of the future will rely on us to maintain and increase the respect and admiration by the way we practice and by the way we live. The second event occurred when I enrolled my children into 2 local private schools. My daughter Kate chose Notre Dame Prep and my son Josh chose McDonough. Part of their creeds, which I read, posed a fundamental question. This is what I really want to get sunk in, is how then shall we live? I found that each of these schools was teaching my children to come to terms with that, what role is they as an individual can play in society, and how it can shape not only themselves as individuals, but a member of the community. The third occurred when I was looking back, as I was rummaging through my grandfather's house. I found the autobiography of Albert Schweitzer. Now, remember, Schweitzer was a philosopher, theologian, musician, teacher, author, husband, father, and physician who once said, "It's not enough merely to exist. It's not enough to say, I am earning enough to live, I support my family, I do my work well, I go to church. That's all very well, but you must do something more. Seek always to do something good somewhere. Every man has to seek his own way to make himself nobler. You must give something to your fellow man. Even if it's a little thing, do something for those who have need, something for which you get no pay but the privilege of simply doing it." Dr. Schweitzer, whose life was an argument in itself, believed how an individual lives is important, not only to the individual, but also to others. So our students and ourselves must answer, how then shall we live? The consequence of not answering this is that the individual will continue to live in accordance with society's metric rather than his or her own. In addition, the distinct importance of that individual as a role model would be lost. Medicine society are moving away from a culture that values service and sacrifice. The movement's insidious, but it's definitely present. It's been fueled by the almost constant attention paid to our culture to personal gratification or the avoidance of anything that resembles stress or overwork. Education has also been marked by the appearance of the entitled medical student. The entitled student is the one who expects attention, expects caretaking, expects love, success, and income, and all the other benefits associated with being a doctor without having to give anything in return. Studies have shown that students become less altruistic as they progress through school. This could be societal impact of self-gratification, but more likely it's the influence of what they see around them in their peers and prior teachers who are less altruistic, and so they have no true role model since it's the behaviors that they see. So, to wrap up, I'm not an activist, and my presentation to you today is not a call to action, but it's just simply a reflection. I ask that all of my colleagues and all of my students consider, in the culture of the here and now, how shall we live? To help in this, I want to share a quick few aphorisms and a few recommendations to help prioritize my life over the years. Service and sacrifice, apply to one's own family. Success in academic critical care medicine does not justify failure as a parent or as a spouse. Our children will never read my CV. They don't care if I'm ever the department chair or the president of this or that. They have specific needs and expectations that must be fulfilled if I am to earn this, the true respectability of being a parent. So number one, your children grow up at light speed, and with your spouse, they will make more sacrifices for your patients than you ever will. The sooner that we realize this, the better for me and the better for them. So somehow, we've got to find a way, all of us, to commit to make up for the missed dinners, the band concerts, the football, and the lacrosse games. Number two, find a way to volunteer our services, anyway. If the opportunity doesn't exist, try and create one. Number three, if our current situation prohibits volunteering, spend time learning about healthcare policy. Educate policymakers about the need for service, the profession of the healthcare, before they legislate, regulate, and propagate policies that constrain our ability to serve our patients. Number four, as academic physicians, we need to educate our administration about the value of true clinical service. Emphasize how serving others is what's all about. Number five, don't whine. Don't whine about reimbursement. Don't whine about the long hours. If you do so, then we can thank ourselves for creating the role model for an entitled medical student. Remember, we wanted to do this. We wanted to become physicians, and the long hours and the hard work come with the territory. Number 6, above all, be a good doctor. Remember why we chose this profession. With that, you've answered the question, how then shall I live? And by choosing to live your life in the service of others, well, just do it well. And you will not only earn the respect of your patients, you will also be a role model for others, and in doing so will maintain and increase the integrity of our profession. Equally important, we will have all earned this, the privilege of being a doctor. In closing, as I join this great group of honored clinicians, let's challenge our students, both new and old, to not accept their good fortune as a matter of course, give something in return, and decide how they, as well as you, will live. Let's all set the example and make a true difference. Thank you.